Farbrengen from Tafshin Mem Beis. This was 44 years ago on Yud Shevat. And that Yud Shevat also came out on a Wednesday, like this year. And the Rebbe is going to learn out lessons from the Shiur of the Chumash of the day, and also mention the idea of the Tilum of the day as well. So we'll begin after the 3 stars, 3 paragraphs on the bottom of the page, Ois Yud Zayin. Duber La'el, it was spoken about earlier in the Farbrengen, Shebeshir Tilum D'Yom Ha'ilula, in the Shiur of Tilum of the Yartzeit, which is the 10th of Shvat, so it's the Shiur Tilum for Yom Yud. Mudgish Inyan Hashira V'Zimra is emphasized the idea of song and music. Heim B'Siyam HaPerek the Shiur the Tilum HaYomi, both in the conclusion of the Perek of the Shiur of the day, Padav Shalom Nafshi V'Gomer, the Perek Harishon, the end of the first Perek, that speaks about Padav Shalom Nafshi. V'heim B'Siyam HaShiur Tilum HaYomi Kanal, and also the conclusion of the daily Tilum. He mentioned before that we conclude the daily Tilum with the words V'ani Ashir Uzecha, I will sing about your might. Uzi Alecha Zamera, your might for me, I will put it to music and I will sing. So we find that the idea of song having to do with the Shiur Tehillim of the day. Now he's going to go to the Shiur Chumash of the day. This matter is also connected with the Yartzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Stalks of the Frierdiker Rebbe, every year. Since it's the Shiur Tilum of the 10th day of the month, so therefore it's always going to be that the Yartzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which is on the 10th of the month, will always be the Shiur Tilum. So the Rebbe wants to point out about what is unique about this year. This year, including the way it was both in Tafshin Mem Beis and the way it is now unique in Tafshin Pei Vav. In addition to that, the way the year comes out, this year's, the way it falls out, Yud Shevat, that the day of the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe comes out on a Wednesday. It's also emphasized the idea of song and music, also in the daily Shiur of Chumash, because that can change year by year. Some years Yud Shevat can come out on a Monday, some years it come out on Shabbos. This time it comes out on a Wednesday. Yedua Pisgam Admur Hazakin, it's known what the Alter Rebbe said, Aides Limud Parsha Shavua, about the studying of the portion of the week, the daily portion. The custom that he established was to study every day the part of the Torah portion that's connected to that particular day of the week. And in the 4th day of this week, Parshas B'Shalach, we study Parshas B'Shalach Miravi Ad Chamishi, from the 4th Aliyah until the 5th Aliyah. And in this Shiur of the Chumash, Mudgish Klalos Inyan HaShira has emphasized the general idea of song, Shiras Hayam, the song upon the sea. Like it begins with the words, Az Yashir Moshe B'nai Yisrael, then Moshe and the B'nai Yisrael will sing Gomer. Vadgoshes Inyan HaShira B'Shira Chumash HaYomim, and the emphasis of the idea of the song in the daily Shiur of Chumash is to such a degree, the entire Torah portion is actually called the Parsha of Song. To such a degree that the Shabbos that we read this Parsha, Nikras Shabbos Shir, it's called the Shabbos of Song. Al Shem Kriyas HaTorah V'Haftorah B'Inyan HaShira, because of the reading of the Torah, and also the Haftorah is also about the idea of song, Shiras Hayam, B'Kriyas HaTorah, we have the song of the sea in the reading of the Torah, V'Shiras D'Vodah B'Haftorah, we have the song of D'Vodah HaNaviah in the Haftorah after the Kriya. So the Rebbe points out how significant this is. This means, though in this Torah portion, it speaks about many topics. And so too in the Haftorah, it also speaks many topics. According to the custom that we begin the Haftorah about Dvoida was a woman who was a prophet. The Haftorah doesn't begin from the song of Dvoida where it starts saying and Dvoida sang. Afal became, despite the fact that both the Torah portion and the Haftorah deal with other topics in addition or except for the Shira, Afal became, despite that, Nikras Kol HaParsha Haftorah, the entire Torah portion, and the entire Haftorah is called Al Shem HaShira. Moving this understood, Goydel Hadgoshas Inyan HaShira V'Simcha, the great emphasis of the idea of song and joy. Ois Yud Ches, V'hinei, B'drushe Admor Marash, the Mamorim of the Rebbe Marash, Mevur Barucha B'kama Mekaymis is explained at length in many places. Goydel Hadgoshas Inyan HaSimcha B'chlos Avodas Hashem, the great emphasis of the idea of joy in the general idea of service of Hashem. Klolos Avodas Ha'adam L'kainoi Mischalekes L'gimel Inyan. The general service of a person to his maker is divided into three items. Torah study, Avodah is service, Lugmils Chasadim, and doing acts of kindness. Like it says in the beginning of Pirkei Avos by our Chazal, Al Shoisha Dvarim Ha'olam Oimed. The world stands upon three things. Hein Ha'olam Kipshutei, both the literal world stands on three things, meaning that the world, as the physical world as we know it, lives and survives and exists based on these three things. Ve'hein ha'olam katan zeh ha'adam, both the miniature world, what's considered the miniature world, the world in a microcosm, that's a human being. Both of those stand upon al Torah, al Avodah, al Gemilas Chasadim, on Torah study, on service of Hashem, and on doing acts of kindness. The general avodah has to be in a manner of joy. Like it's explained over there, many proofs from Psukim and what Chazal say. Beginning from the pasuk, it says this. David HaMelech says this: you should serve Hashem with joy. Is if you want to narrow down this pasuk specifically, Koi pasuk ze al avodas hatfilah. This pasuk is referring to the service of davening. Like the Chazal say, that in Krishma it says, Ula avdoi b'chol avavchem. In the second part in Krishma it says, you shall serve him with all your heart. And the Chazal say, what does it mean to serve him with all your heart? So they ask a question. What is an avodah that is done with the heart, that for that reason he has to say in Krishma, you shall serve him with all your heart. So we know that, so the Chazal say this is talking about the avodah of the heart, that's davening. So when it says, Ivdus Hashem b'simcha, in a narrow interpretation, Ivdus Hashem b'simcha means that your davening should be done out of joy. So that's the narrow interpretation of the pasuk Ivdus Hashem b'simcha. Aval b'chlolos, but in a larger sense, Koi pasuk zeh al klos avodas ha'adam. The pasuk serve Hashem with joy is referring to the general service of a person, as the Chazal say, Ani nivreisil shamshes koini. I was created to serve my Maker. That this avoid has to be in such a way, like the pasuk says, serve Hashem with joy. Similarly, we find concerning Torah study, like it's brought down the Gemara, Elamatech simcha shel mitzvah. The Shechina does not rest upon a person not in a state of sadness, only out of a state of joy of a mitzvah. V'chein ledvar halacha, and so too for a matter of halacha, of Torah, one also needs to have the joy alongside with it. V'lechein, for that reason, mekamed apasach l'Rabbanan, that we find that the sages, before they began a shiur, Amar milsa de b'dilchasa, they said a word of almost like a joke, what we would call. Ubatche Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon were joyful, and then they would immerse themselves into giving the shiur. In a similar vein concerning doing acts of kindness. That the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tzedakah has to be in a way of giving it with a smiling countenance, with a pleasant countenance. Not only doesn't he act in an opposite way, meaning giving just an ordinary gift, or like the pasuk says, your heart shouldn't feel bad when you give it to him. The way how one gives another person tzedakah has to be done with a pleasant face. The Rebbe says we find something that's a wonder about this. Maimer Mishnah, the statement of the Mishnah of Ever Mekabels called the Adam Besever Panim Yofis, you should greet every single person with a smiling countenance. Nemar Aidei Shammai. It's said by Shammai, who was seemingly the more severe of the Shammai Hillel disputes. And Shammai was known to be more in the Tzaddik Gvura and more intense, etc., etc. And he was encouraged to greet everybody with a beautiful face. If Shammai, who was usually the more severe person, said that one should greet everyone with a smiling, a pleasant countenance, how much more so it is according to the opinion of Hillel. So the Rebbe says the final two lines in this page. Move on, according to this understood. Though the service of Hashem could be in many ways, the king's highway, meaning the king's highway is the broad way. But for the king, they used to make a very broad road. Hashem b'simcha is to serve Hashem with joy. B'chol gimel akavim, the Torah avodah gemilas chasadim, in all the three lines of Torah and service of Hashem and doing acts of kindness. And the Rebbe expands this even further, including also that we are enjoined that all your actions should be done for the sake of heaven. In all your ways you should know. That means every activity in my life, eating, working, etc., all these things are supposed to be done as a service of Hashem. They're supposed to be done for the sake of heaven. Therefore, so my sleeping is part of Avodas Hashem, my eating is part of Avodas Hashem, my working is part of Avodas Hashem. Therefore, they also have to be done out of joy. Not only something that is technically part of the 613 mitzvahs. So the Rebbe continues, since Simcha breaks through barriers, move on, it's understood, that the joy breaks through all the categories, all the limitations that's in a person's service. Here is the main point that he wants to bring this out over here in our situation. That since we are talking about serving Hashem, and since joy breaks through barriers, so therefore, any type of barriers that a person might have in his avodah, Simcha could break through it. Until the service is in a complete and perfect way. The explanation this is, Bitachon, it's possible that the person's service should be in a way that's measured and has a boundary. Where the boundaries come from, where's the measure come from? Because of the intellect's limitations. Because he's serving Hashem based on his intellect, and the intellect, the mind, is limited. So the mind says, well, this far makes sense for you to do. Not anymore. Then his service is in such a way that you're serving him with all your heart, with all your soul, in such a manner that when someone, for example, helps out the poor person, he helps him out sufficient according to the lack that person is lacking. He does the avodah not in the way of riches. He and his claim is it's sufficient to give him what he is lacking. You're not obligated to make him rich. The Chazal say that a person is obligated to give tzedakah to the degree that if a poor person, let's say, used to be rich and they're used to having a rider run in front of them and used to having a horse to ride on, so if the community is able to, they need to supply him even with that. But they don't have an obligation to make the person rich. They only have an obligation to give him the things that he was used to, etc. So the Rebbe is like broadening this thing. In all my matters of Avodas Hashem, I could do it. There's a term in Yiddish called Af Yoitze Zayin. I'm doing the mitzvah. I'm doing what I have to do to fulfill my obligation. That's like Dei Machsoida Asher Yachsoloi. But don't expect me to go and do it in a rich manner. Do it over and beyond. Comes the Rebbe and says, this is where Simcha helps out. Avol Tachlis HaShleimus Avodah is the ultimate in perfection of a person's service is Kasher Avodah, but even the B'chol Meidecha, when the service is in such a manner of doing it with all your might, that Chassidus explains that the idea of Me'oid means L'maylam Emdida V'Hagbala, beyond measure and boundary. Just like when we use the term in Chumash, Toiv Me'oid, very good. So good is a limited good. By adding the Me'oid, that's a superlative that means that there's no boundaries anymore. So B'chol Meidecha means that the person's love and service of Hashem is without any limitations. Hainu, this means not only is the person served with his 10 inner soul powers, meaning the soul powers that are limited and are clothed, each one according to their level, the intellect and the emotions, the thought, speech, and deed. The person serves Hashem also with the transcendent powers of the soul. He serves Hashem with his will and with his delight, that those things, when a person delights in something and a person wants something beyond intellect, then there's no limitations. He doesn't say, I'm going to stop over here. It's an enjoyable thing. I don't stop. It's something that I really want. I don't stop. This is connected with the general service of that you should love Hashem your God. Avoid ma'ava, the avoid out of love. What is a true avoid out of love? That when a person is serving Hashem, not for the sake of receiving reward, like it's explained the Rambam Besifri Yad Chazaka Shu Halachas Halachas in his book called Yad Chazaka, that's a compilation of laws, meaning this is a book of laws, not just some, concepts and philosophy and so on. That is brought down by Perek Asiri, the Hilchos Tshuva, in the 10th chapter of the laws of Tshuva, the great quality of the service out of love. That then, when I'm doing it out of love, I reach the level of B'chol Meidecha, that I go beyond any boundaries or limitations. Like we see in actuality. When the service is out of a love for Hashem, then the person doesn't make calculations that he already accomplished that which he is responsible for. Like I said before, the Yiddish expression. Making such type of calculations that I was yoitz, I fulfilled my obligation, that's the opposite of acting and doing an avoid out of love. Can move on as it's understood. But rather, the avoid out of love, which is also expressed in joy, is in a way it's beyond any measure and boundary. This we can derive by how much more so from the physical. If it's concerning material things. Teva, the nature of a person is when he has 100, he wants 200. When he has 200, he wants 400, etc. When it comes to himself, it's the other person that he's saying you have to give him only what's enough. But when it comes to the person himself, if I have 100, I want 200. If I have 200, I want 400, and it doesn't stop. It increases exponentially, and I don't say enough is enough already. How much do you need? What are you going to do already with a second billion that you can't do with 1 billion? How much more so it has to be concerning spiritual matters. To study Torah with diligence, and on the service of davening and doing acts of kindness and in general to do mitzvahs without any type of consideration of I've done the minimum, I fulfilled my obligation. When the service is in such a manner, with all your might, beyond measure and boundary, through the service that is done based on the transcendent soul powers, which is the person's will and the person's delight and enjoyment and pleasure. Then also the 10 inner soul powers, the permeating soul powers, the intellect, the emotions, etc., they reach a state of perfection because they are permeated with avoida of these transcendent powers. While Pisa moving according to this understood, the great advantage of doing service out of joy. Since joy breaks through barriers and boundaries, then the service in such a manner that's beyond measure and boundary, because that's the nature of joy. That's where we started with this whole idea, that once we have a service with joy, joy breaks through all barriers. When the service of a person is with joy, so then beyond measure and boundary, so then it's midah keneged midah. So then Hashem's kindness to us is also in such a way. We awaken, we draw down all of those influences from above, that they should also be beyond measure and boundary in such a way of a revealed joy. Like it's explained in the Zohar, that this which comes down from above are corresponding to, and they match, they're a mirror image in the manner of the service of a person. So when he goes out of his bounds, so then Hashem's hashpos, what Hashem gives us, is also beyond boundaries. Hainu, this means also concealed kindnesses, which is, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains, this concealed kindness of Hashem is to be found when a person is chas v'shalom suffering. So the kindness of Hashem is concealed. And usually that's concealed, Alter Rebbe says, because beyond revelation, above Seder Ishtalshlos, but being that he's breaking through his boundaries, he's breaking through his barriers, so he causes that those barriers that say that concealed kindness cannot come down in a revealed way, but they come down in things that are suffering, Instead, it breaks through the boundaries. Nimshachim mizgalim ba'ofen the toiv anir v'aniglim. They are drawn down and become revealed in the way of a visible and revealed good. Hatoiv lanu tiftach. It says that which is good for us, you should open up, the Rebbe says. Ki kasher hamshachas habrachas hi ba'ofen the nira v'nigla, because when the drawing down of brachas is in a visible and revealed way, hareza ma'orer simcha, so then that causes and brings about an idea of joy. I don't know what these marks are here on the page. Ois chaf v'hi rotzen should be the will of Hashem, should be korav mamish, very soon mamish. Nizkel l'shira hasiris, the lost lovi, we should merit the 10th song of Mashiach's times. It says that throughout Jewish history, there are 9 times that are recorded shira in the Torah and Tanakh, the first time being Oz Yasher. And when Mashiach comes, we will sing the 10th song. It'll be the 10th shira. Like I just now said that, like it's explained in the Mamar Chazal, that up till now was 9 songs, beginning from the song of Moshe Bnei Yisrael and our parsha and today's Shir Chumash. When Mashiach comes, will be the 10th song. Along with the 10th count of the Bnei Yisrael, because again it says in Tanakh 10 different occasions when the Jewish people, 9 different occasions when the Jewish people were counted, and then there'll be the 10th count when Mashiach comes. With Bias Mashiach Tzedkenu b'Gula Mitzvah Shleim, and the coming of Mashiach Tzedkenu and the true and complete redemption. Since all the revelations of the future time are dependent on our actions and service throughout the time of exile, moving it's understood the general service in a state of joy in the time of exile. This is the appropriate preparation to the everlasting joy upon their heads, which is going to be Begula Asida, this will be in the future redemption. And the general service in a way that's beyond measure and boundary. Like we mentioned bore, that when we break out of our boundaries, which is the idea of joy, so that brings Hashem's brachas down from above in a way of breath and breaking out of boundaries. Children and life and sustenance in a comfortable way. Adlar chava amitis, until a true breadth and broadness. Koisi revoya, that my cup is overflowing. Metech shira, and out of song, like the Chazal say, ein oimrim shira ela ala yain. Shira is only recited over wine, which is koise shel Malach HaMashiach. In this case, it's the cup of King Mashiach. We merit the fulfillment of what was foretold, that Pari sent out a nation, in this case from our final goals, just like in the redemption from Golos Mitzrayim, there came out more than 600,000 Yidden, like it says that a great mixed multitude came up with them. Like the Chazal say in Psachim, the Golos Mitzrayim, the general idea of the exile Mitzrayim, it's likened to a person that plants a small amount of kernels of wheat to be able to bring in a lot, much more wheat, so much more. The same thing, we were planted in Mitzrayim. It's the Haftorah of Parsha Shmois, Haboim Yashrish Yaakov Yotzos of Varach Yisrael, that we, the Jewish people, were planted in Mitzrayim, only 70 people, only 70 souls. And from that came out much more than 600,000. In the language of Kabbalah Chassidus, this mixed multitude, this great multitude that came out afterwards, This is indicating the elevation of all the sparks of holiness that were embedded in Mitzrayim, specifically Rav indicates 202 out of the 288 sparks that fell into the world. So just like then, also so movement in the Galicia Magos Achron is also understood concerning the exodus from the final exile. We elevate and we take along all the sparks of holiness wherever they are, even on the ends of the heavens. Well, like it says that even from the edges of the heavens I will collect you. And how much more so that's not that if it's the sparks of holiness, so for sure Jews themselves, if you're going to elevate every spark, for sure you're going to take out of Golus every single Jew. Including also those that are found in a state and situation of children that were in captivity amongst Goyim, that we say that they are not responsible for their actions because they grew up among non-Jews. The same thing that Rebbe speaks about, that our generation, these last few generations, Yidden did not grow up in a Jewish environment to know any better than the way they act. So for sure, those they will definitely be brought back. Like it says, if those of you that are scattered will be at the edges of the heavens, from there he will collect you. Hashem your God, from there he will take you. So even if you are a nidach, even if you're pushed away, it's like spiritually very far, but they're all tenoikis shenishbu bein ha'akum. Begula mitzvah shleima, the true and complete redemption. Following the parsha b'shalach, we come to parshas Yisroi, which is a parsha the Matan Torah. That's the portion that deals with the giving of the Torah. That means, again, just like we're talking about the par in the past, leaving Golus, the same thing we're talking about the future leaving Golus, and therefore, just like we're talking about the giving of the Torah in the past in Parshas Yisroi, we're also referring to the future receiving of the Torah from Mashiach. What does it mean again, Matan Torah? There's not going to be Matan Torah again. Matan Torah was only one time. It's explained in Tanya chapter 36. The revelation of godliness that was during Matan Torah. It's only similar to the revelation of godliness that will be when Mashiach comes. When your master will not hide themselves anymore in a garment, and your eyes will see your master. So too it's understood concerning the great advantage of Torah study. Like it says, it says when Mashiach comes, no more will a person have to teach his fellow, because all will know them, all will know me, from the most minor to the greatest. We'll show in the Rambam, like the Rambam expressed that in the future, they will comprehend and they will grasp the mind of the Creator according to human beings' capabilities, in the ultimate perfection, speedily in our days mamish.